Okay, so some more extremely basic information. You will hear the construction of guitars referred to as bolt-on, glued in, or set neck, or neck through. Leo Fender, I think, invented the bolt-on. I could be wrong about that. But the reason it's called a bolt-on is because the neck, see, the neck pocket has 4 screw holes, and rather than gluing it in place, you just take 4 screws, or bolts, and attach the neck. Now, there's, as with paint and tone woods and everything else, there's a lot of debate about the relative merits of bolt-on versus set neck versus neck through. Most of that is smoke and mirrors as well. You know, take guitars out of the picture. Ask a furniture maker whether a glued-in joint is inherently stronger than a bolted-on or screwed-in joint. It is not. Yeah, it's just personal preference. It's a different technique. It's a different manufacturing process. Bolt-on guitars are every bit as good as set neck or neck through guitars. So that's just a personal preference thing. Okay, this neck pocket is not super tight, but it'll be okay. So I need to drill the holes for the neck screws and screw that on. But before I do that, I'm going to show you a few other things. So I won't be able to really check the nut until we get the guitar assembled, the neck is on, and it's strung up. One thing you want to avoid, to the extent possible on any electric guitar, is fret buzz. Now, you get fret buzz for a lot of reasons. Your nut slots are too low, your bridge is not adjusted right. But remember, when you pluck a string, it does not go straight up and down. It makes actually an ellipsis. And because of that, if there are any high frets, it has a tendency to buzz against those. So what we do is we take something like this. It's just a little very, very flat-sided piece of aluminum. The sides are different lengths so that we can run along, and we just check every set of 3 frets to see if there's any rock. So sometimes these are called fret rockers for that exact reason. Okay, there's just the tiniest bit of fret rock there. Now, in a perfect world, this thing would be completely level. Oh, I'm so sorry. Before we do that, your guitar neck has a thing called a truss rod. It's a piece of metal that runs in a groove in the guitar. If you have an old maple neck and it has what they call a skunk stripe down the back, that used to be because that was where they routed out a trench to put in the truss rod and then glued in a piece to cover it. Now, they did that because the neck and fretboard were all one piece of wood. This neck is a different piece of wood than the fretboard, so they didn't have to do that. The truss rod you adjust through the end, and that allows it, as you put tension on the strings, of course, the wood wants to bend backwards, so that truss rod applies pressure the other way, and ideally you keep it flat. Guitar guru Dan Erlewine, you can basically bank on anything Dan says about guitars. The man is an absolute master of his craft. He says he likes to keep the necks as flat as possible. Usually you end up needing a little bit of relief. So relief is concave, not convex. If it's bowed up, convex, you are definitely going to have problems. Concave, usually necessary. So the way you check if your guitar is flat, a good luthier can look at their neck and see if it's flat. I can't do that. So you take a notched straight edge. So this one has, one side is Les Paul scale, one side is Fender scale. It's not, so it fits over the frets. You just look at it, see, okay, do you have any gaps? And there actually are gaps right in the middle. So this is bowed up just a little bit, and that's okay. So it's touching on the ends and just a millimeter, less than a millimeter off the fretboard in the middle. Like I said, that's okay. So we go back to our fret rocker here. In a perfect world, these frets would be absolutely level, but there is some tolerance, and leveling and crowning your frets is such a pain that I'm going to try it if it's not too bad, and if it buzzes, then I'll show you how we fix it. It's something that you can do when your guitar is all assembled, unlike some other things. Okay, just the tiniest bit of rock there. 13th fret. I have a feeling I'm going to need to come back and flatten that one out. Okay, 16th fret is just a tiny bit high. Okay. Only 2 spots that I get any rock at all. So I'm really impressed by that. It appears that all of the quality control went into the neck and not the body. But enough about that. So the neck's pretty good. It's easier to attach the hardware to the neck before I bolt it onto the guitar. So I'm going to go ahead and attach the tuners. Oh, you know what? I forgot to install my string ferrules. So let's do that before I start working on the neck. Shop is getting mighty messy here. Okay, this is what happens when you're going too fast. I really should have done that first, and you'll see why here in a second. So, oops. It's all right. Just to give the front of it a little cushion. But I really need to not be hammering onto that bridge, so I need something to rest this on. Just one of the many, many wonderful uses for scrap lumber. There we go. Ferrules are just press fit. There's nothing fancy about this. But press fit does need a little bit more force than you can apply with your thumb. So I take a nice flat piece of wood and a mallet and knock them in. So now you can see why I didn't want to be forcing down on the bridge while I was doing this. Yes, except for the spots where I've knocked into the finish. Kids, don't do this at home. Man, that is super annoying. Well, the only solution I have to that is to respray that area, or just live with it as a little bit of relicking. Nope, that's too obvious. I can't live with it. Okay, so now I pause this and I'm going to spray some more paint on and we'll come back and work on this more tomorrow. Okay, while I'm letting my body dry, I've decided to continue working on assembling the neck and immediately ran into my next problem. So the fancy Clooney, or doggone, the Tone Pros Kluson style tuners that I had don't fit. So over the years there have been several different standards for sizes of tuners. A modern tuner requires a 10mm hole in the peg head, and this has a vintage ream. A vintage ream. That's a deep inside joke for some of you. And luckily I do have exactly one set of tuners that matches that vintage ream. So it's an interesting system, so let me show this to you. The tuner itself requires this press-in bushing, just fits loose, and it's that bushing that keeps it from wobbling around inside the hole, and then you have a little screw to keep it from going side to side. These are meant to be installed, as the name suggests, in a line. They are 6-in-line tuners. So, and these also are not Guitarfetish tuners. I got these from a place called Rock Audio. Don't even know if Rock Audio exists anymore. Rock Audio, my apologies if you exist. You stopped sending me spam a long time ago, for which I am thankful. Alright, so as you can see, some of those bushings went right in, literally with just finger pressure, and some of them did not. Goodness. And those are painful to push in, so I know this is irony. There we go. Bushings fit in. One of them obviously a little looser than the others. So the tuners are keyed for in lines. The ones on the outside have these little flanges on them. The ones in the middle do not. Believe it or not, it's installing tuners that I hate worse than any other part of the project, because on 2 occasions I have broken off tuner screws while installing the tuners. These tiny, tiny little screws, I don't even know if the camera is going to pick that up, but they are not large and they do not have much structural strength, and you apply a little too much torque and they just snap, which is, well, it's possible to recover from that, but it takes a lot of work. And of course these do not line up perfectly. The engineering tolerances on these tuners are not exactly tight, which does not lead me to expect that they're going to provide the greatest tuning stability in the world either. But it is what it is. So now I will mark my holes. That's annoying. Knew that was going to happen, but it's annoying. And yes, I actually have just drilled them with the tuners in place before. That never works out. Just end up drilling away bits of the black plating. Actually, that end one is so loose, and everything else is so dependent on it. I'm going to drill the holes that I have, and then we will take it from there. And for this, I need to get my drill ready again. Sorry, I had 4 of them drilled up before I realized that I had paused the video. So don't want to get my hopes up too far, but so far wait a minute. That bushing won't press fit. I mean, there's literally nothing holding it in except friction. I may have to apply a little super glue to that. I'm always leery of using glue where I don't have to. Okay. Tell it's been a while since I used super glue. My shop bottle has turned to plastic, so I've got to go get some super glue. Okay. I put the smallest amount of super glue I could around the rim. Doesn't take much to hold those things in place. Of course, liquidy super glue is very messy. And of course, now that bushing is permanently locked in place. So yeah, not 100% even, but not the worst I've seen either. The only other thing that I need to install now on the neck is the string tree. Now, theoretically, the string pull on this neck is very straight, and I should just be able to run a line from the slot in the nut to the string, but that is not always the case on lower priced necks. So I like to wait until it's on the guitar and I actually have strings strung onto it, and then I'll put a string tree on it. If you're not familiar with a string tree, it is little device like so. It simply presses down on 2 strings. You need a certain break angle over the nut, and on these straight headstocks like Fender uses, these last 2, some people say really 3, but definitely these last 2 strings are too long and there's too shallow of an angle. So you install a string tree, usually about here halfway between the 2nd and 3rd fret tuners, to push down on the strings and give you a greater break angle, and that'll keep you from buzzing. You also can buy tuners that are at staggered heights, but that is not the case with these. They are all the same height, which is, typical. All right, so our tuners are in place. They're not split inclusons like I was hoping, but that didn't work out. So they're vintage looking, but not truly vintage operating. And I have no idea how good these tuners are, or if they're any good at all. So we will find out. Right now they look the part, and that is at least half of the battle. Okay, so we're going to pause while the paint dries on the back of the body, and then I'll come in, bolt on the neck, put on the string tree, and then string it up. That's always an exciting time. So stay tuned for that.